Hey everyone, welcome back to Breakthrough Innovation, where we uncover what it really takes to lead change, create value, and build what's next. I'm JL Heather, a co founder of Centered, where we help organizations navigate complexity, spark creativity, and unlock the full potential of their teams through innovation and coaching and strategy. Today's guest brings a fresh and reflective lens to how curiosity fuels transformation. We're joined by Danielle McCombs, a coach, podcast host of The Opposite of Small Talk, and former commercial real estate executive who now helps people explore who they are and who they're becoming. After 20 years in commercial real estate, Danielle made a bold pivot to pursue her passion for personal development. Through her coaching practice and her podcast, The Opposite of Small Talk, she's on a mission to help people live with intention, lead with curiosity, and embrace growth. Danielle, you may have the best title for a podcast out of anyone I know. I love it. And I love all your guests. I listen as often as I can. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here, JL. I'm really excited about this conversation.
Awesome. Well, I think maybe one of the really interesting places to start, and we've talked a little bit about this before, that career pivot moment, it's a really bold move. It's a hard one. Both of us have been through it at this point. I'm curious, what fears did you face in walking away from something established? And what was the method, the way that you worked through those?
Well, I will say there's definitely a lot of fears. Obviously, the what am I doing without a paycheck is like the biggest one you think about. And how do I make this work? But and I'll be honest, I didn't have a huge plan. I didn't lay out a plan of like, this is what's going to happen first and this is what's going to happen second and have all of my, everything laid out in front of me. It was more I will say a moment of clarity or mania that made me quit my job. And so I had been exploring coaching with a coach. I had hired a coach to kind of figure out what do I want to do with my life because I was starting to feel as though the place that I was not for me anymore, but I wasn't sure what was because that was all that I had ever done. And in starting to work with a coach, I was started to be like, I want to do what you do. Because within a couple of sessions with him, I was able to see myself in such a different way that I couldn't have done on my own. And so in working with him, I started to discover that there is this world of possibility out there that I just didn't see because I was in the same career for so long, in the same industry. And having the idea of, I've been doing this for 20 years. Do I want to do it for another 20? Because that's kind of where we were going. So I've made the halfway point and I can continue down this path, or I could make a big change. And I will say part of that change was my mother got ill, and it really shook up everything that I knew in my life and made me realize, like, I don't think I want to keep doing this thing that I've been doing for 20 years. And I want to take a risk. And I want to just do something else that gives me more freedom, gives me more fulfillment. These and I would say freedom and fulfillment weren't words that were in my normal vocabulary when I talked about my job, but now they are. And that has been really amazing to know that that is a possibility. And that's a possibility for anyone, not just me. So it's been over 3.5 years now that I've been doing this. And I won't say that I also have it all figured out because I don't. I don't think any entrepreneur does. I think that we are constantly learning how to change and learning new things that work and what doesn't, and being able to experiment with that is part of the fun of entrepreneurship and part of the scary part of entrepreneurship.
Yeah. It's interesting to me, like listening to you talk about it. I think trying to think how to quantify this. I want to say everyone. I'm not sure. It's probably just the vast majority of people. Their career is on autopilot. Right? They know I'm gonna go to college for this, I'm gonna graduate and get a job, I'm gonna work and I'm gonna change jobs every 5 years and get promotions and everything and just work up in my career. The idea that you can just switch midstream, I don't think occurs to a lot of people, and I think it's just this expectation that comes from somewhere, parents, society, something like that, that this is just how you live your life. I think it takes a lot of courage to pivot midstream and make the change to be fulfilled. And it takes someone with a different perspective to be able to look at what they're doing and take the step back and go, this isn't right. I'm wondering, you mentioned earlier that the opposite of small talk, your podcast played a role in your career pivot. What were some of the conversations? What were some of the guests that really kind of fed into that pivot and kind of made that happen?
So we started the opposite of small talk in 2019. I also started a new job in 2019. And this job I was like very excited for. Went after it hard. I went after the partners on this team and said, I want to work for you. And I went around to anyone that would listen to me to say, I want to work for this team. How can you help me? And I'm not sure whether they were like, yes, we really want her, or we're sick and tired of hearing of her. Whatever it was, they gave me this job. And so I was super excited of I thought this was what I've wanted, right? It was kind of pivoting what I was doing. I was in a more sales role, a business development role, rather than being behind a screen. Was really excited to get out into the world more than being the behind the scenes person. I started in December of 2019, right? Our podcast started in October of 2019. So we all know what happened in early 2020 was the world shut down. And so I wasn't taking people to fancy dinners. I wasn't shaking hands at conferences. I wasn't doing the stuff of being with people because we weren't allowed. It wasn't a thing that happened. And I was doing this new thing, this new venture with my friend Christy, this podcast that I really had no idea of what it meant or what it was going to do. A friend asked me to do a project with her, and I said, sure. Then we started having all of these conversations. We're interviewing people. And also, I will say, then we had the pandemic on our side. As a podcast in the pandemic, we would reach out to people, and people were stuck in their homes and were happy to talk to us for an hour. Like, sure, let
Yeah.
me do something different. And a lot of the people we spoke with were coaches. And I really didn't have any understanding of what coaching was, I've never had an experience with a coach before. And having these conversations with people who had made these pivots from corporate careers into coaching and being on their own, they all had a very similar story. And their story was, I had the job, I had the title, I had the paycheck, and I wasn't fulfilled. And hearing that again and again started to sound very familiar.
Yeah.
I was like, huh, that's interesting. Yep. Nope. I got the job. I have the paycheck. I have like you know, my office was in a very fancy building, and it was all the things that you would think should be making me happy. And it wasn't. So then that piqued my interest into coaching. Was around that was seeing other people who have done it and kind of starting to understand that this was an option. This was a way that I could explore more, which led me to hiring a coach myself. And that's when things really changed, was hiring this coach that then gave me the opportunity to really discover what did I want to do and take that time after being in a career for 20 years to step back and say like, wait, did I make any of these decisions? Or am I making like, what is the decision I'm making next?
Yeah. Was that coach ever a guest on the podcast?
He was. I will say the way that I found him was actually someone had sent me, he had done some online workshop about imposter syndrome, and a friend sent it to me. And I watched it and I said, oh, he would be great for the podcast. And I set a meeting with him and we get on, and 45 minutes later, I did not have a guest for my podcast. I had a coach, and he then became a guest once we finished our work together, then he came on the podcast.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So maybe let's pivot a little bit and let's talk about your coaching business at this point. So tell me a little bit about what type of clients do you work for? How did you find kind of your niche to fit in, and kind of where are you going?
That niche question, I hate it, JL. I will say I work with a lot of people who are in the commercial real estate industry because that's my network. Those are the people I know. And I'll be honest, in the beginning, I very much wanted to run away from that industry and say, all right, I'm out. I'm totally out. And then what I realized was I actually really like the people in this industry. I understand this industry, and I don't need to do the work that I don't want to do anymore, but I can contribute in a different way. So that's where a lot of my clients come from, is the world of commercial real estate, but I do coach people outside of that. One of the things that I'm exploring more now is coaching people more in the affordable housing world. That's where I started my career in commercial real estate. And I realized the mission driven part of that is something that is really important to me. And so I am looking to coach more people that are in that world.
And I like the idea that even though you didn't have a plan, you kind of ran some experiments to figure things out. You tried some things, maybe they didn't work perfectly, and you moved on to the next thing. What were some of the lessons you learned along the way?
I think is not this, and this is comes from our coaching training, right? Is like not being attached to an outcome. And that has been one of the things that is helpful is I'm going to try this thing and we're going to see if it works. And if it doesn't, that's okay. And I'm going to move on. That it's not a place of failure necessarily. It's data. It's information that you're getting when something doesn't work. And to be okay with that. And that's a hard thing. It's a really hard thing, especially the world that I came from was very transactional. So as you started at point A, you had a client that wanted to purchase a building. You got them the money to do that, and you worked with all of the people in between there, and you got to a closing, and that person purchased that building, right? There was a very everything in between was different, but like there was a very clear path of where you were going and what your goal was. And that I don't feel that anymore, which is a little hard at times, but it is something that I'm trying to embrace more is to say like, yep, maybe this thing is going to work and that's going to be great. And some things do. And then also knowing when it doesn't work anymore is also okay. So it's like being able to let go, which is not something that comes easily to me either, to be like, you know what, that thing isn't serving me anymore and I need to move on. So being reflective about those things. And I think that comes down to like being curious around what is happening and being engaged in it and not being so like looking down one path of this is the way things have to go, but being able to see a larger picture.
No, I like that. I think, obviously that resonates with me just given that we went through the similar training. Uh, what's next? Where are you headed? Like, what's your next experiment?
That's a good question. I think that what I want to do is really focus in, and when you ask me the niche question that I think is kind of new for me, is to get into a very specific place where I can go in and say, I want to be a part of the mission that you're doing to provide affordable housing. That is something that is new, and I'm trying to figure out how to get into that a little bit more. At the end of the day, you're doing the same work coaching people and regardless of what you're coaching them on, but I want to be able to be feel like I'm contributing into something that is more important to me, and I think that that's a way that I could do.
No, I love it. And I think, that's an easy tie to value for helping people. Like you can really look into that and go, yeah, this is something that's fulfilling for me. I've made a difference. I'm curious, like when you coach people, and I have my own thoughts on this, so I'm curious to hear yours. How many people feel like they have that direct link to this is how I'm helping my fellow humans?
Mm, I don't know. I think people don't think about it. I think people think this is the job that I do, and I'm gonna go do this job. And this is a great example. One of the companies that I'm working with is where I started my career. So I'm coaching people who worked for this company. And some people I know from when I was at the company 15 years ago, and other people are new to me. But it's very interesting to see. I feel now that I also left the world of like affordable housing and nonprofit and went into the world of brokerage and, making rich people richer and all of that, but not knowing at the time that that wasn't going to be fulfilling to me. And now going back and seeing that and being a part of this mission in a new and different way is fulfilling to me. And I do try to remind the people that I'm coaching that there is a bigger thing that you're doing, right? But we get lost in that, especially when it's your everyday job and you have to go in and Joe sent you another 20 emails on the deal that blah, 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 and you're in the minutia of it, forgetting that there's this bigger picture. And so I think that is important, especially when people are doing like mission driven work, is to pull out a little bit further and say, yeah, you know what, on the bad days that I feel like I'm not doing anything, like, okay, if we pull out, we can see on a macro level what's happening here.
Right. I do think, just leaders in general, like understand your purpose and make sure the people that work for you and with you understand that purpose as well and how it connects to improving people's lives in some way. I don't think that can be undervalued. I do think though we are getting close to on time here. So I want to ask one last question. You've been in the coaching space, the personal development space. Where do you feel like that industry as a whole still has some challenges and where do you think it's going next?
I think the challenge we have is part of people don't understand it. People don't know what coaching is. I think that when I talk to people about what I do, people are confused. They don't understand what is coaching, what is happening here. So I think education around what that is and how valuable it can be is something that needs to happen. I do also, and this is just an I don't know if this is what you're thinking is anyone can call themselves a coach. And I do think that there is a part of that that is a little dangerous sometimes. Like, you and I went through the same training, and that was a pretty rigorous training, and so I do feel like I have credentials to be a coach, and I feel that I have tools to do that. And not that you have to go through maybe what we did, but also that there is I don't know, I think the part of it diminishes what we do when anyone can just say, "I'm a coach."
Yeah. Well, and like, so you're certified to the International Coaching Federation, so the
Mhm,
ICF. I do think for anyone that's listening and thinking about finding a coach, that's probably a really good place to start. Make sure someone is certified, make sure they've gone through the training that sets up that certification. I think what I'm seeing right now, and maybe you're seeing the same thing, is for coaches who do have that ICF certification, at least on the corporate level, that means something that helps. And I do think at a certain point in the future, when we look at what insurance will pay for, what businesses will pay for their employees, that ICF accreditation is going to be something that they look for just
mhm.
to make sure that they're hiring someone that actually knows what they're doing. That being said, I know you've gone through the test on ICF, all that sort of stuff. Do you think that's enough?
Huh, that's a good question. I mean, I think for as far as, like, regulating something, like, there has to be some sort of standard, right? It would be great if everyone could, I don't know, figure out, like, are you a good coach or a bad coach? But I don't know how you figure that out. But I think there just needs to be some sort of understanding of what a coach is and what those credentials are and what they because it is real. I think that anyone can walk in some people think coaching somebody is telling them what to do, which is not what it is. And unless you've had the training, I don't think people understand that. Like, I think that was kind of what I understood when I went into that. I was like, great, I'm just going to tell people how to live their lives. And it is the complete opposite of that. And that training you need in order to not run in and say, here, let me fix all your problems and I'll tell you how to do it. That's important in this. But because I think it's
Absolutely.
super important for your clients.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, and I will fully admit I'm biased in that regard. That said, we do have to start wrapping up. For anyone who might be looking for some support, some coaching, maybe in the affordable housing market, what's the best way for them to reach out and connect with you?
So you can go to daniellemccombs.com is where you can find me and you can book a session with me right there for no charge, nothing, just to learn more about me, learn about coaching, or tell me about what you're looking for.
Awesome. Danielle, thank you so much for the time today. I know we've chatted many times before and we probably could have gone another hour, which is the way it seems to go with all my guests, but I really appreciate your time, your insights. For everyone else who made it all the way to the end with us, one, don't forget to leave that 5-star rating. It helps us out a lot. Two, make sure if you know someone who could use some support from a really great coach like Danielle, or who might even be interested in some of the opposite of small talk, share the episode with them, introduce them to Danielle. It would go a long ways. And then lastly, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Where are you struggling? What is your perspective on your career and the value you create? And are you considering a pivot? We'd love to hear and we'd love to help. So, one more time, Danielle, thank you so much for your time. And for everyone else, we'll see you next time on Breakthrough Innovation.